This is Food Talk for Health. Here is your host, Tonia King.
Thanks for joining me today. On Food Talk for Health, we explore practical nutrition tips, how real food and lifestyle can really heal, prevent disease, and help boost energy. Each episode features passionate guests sharing their knowledge to help you eat better, feel better, and live healthier. Hope you'll subscribe to the podcast and share it with someone else who might benefit. My guest today is Mark Faulkner, founder of Concrete Creatine. How are you today, Mark?
I'm very well, thank you. Honored to be with you.
Tell me a little bit about your story.
I did not think that I would be in the creatine business. It never was on my radar screen, but myself and another gentleman founded a forensic toxicology laboratory that focused on athletic drug testing, and we were doing all sorts of performance enhancement testing. Our original team developed the steroid testing program for the National Football League, and that spread into all sorts of other tests and working with other organizations. And the athletes were acknowledging that many of them, for strength, endurance, and recovery, were dependent on steroids. And if we were going to take them away, if their conferences and athletic organizations weren't going to allow them to use them anymore, that they needed something else to help them with their day-to-day activities. Because, as they said, we're in the equivalent of multiple car wrecks every weekend. We got to be able to get up on Tuesday morning and do our jobs, because otherwise there's lots of people waiting to take our roster spot. And this is how we feed our families.
Right.
And nothing else on the market works. And so I heard that enough that after about 10 years in selling out of the laboratory, I started working with some sports medicine researchers, and we were looking at peptides, amino acids, various conjugations of creatine, and trying to find something that would be safe, healthy, and legal that would help these athletes run faster, jump higher, and have the strength, endurance, and recovery that they needed to do just that, feed their families. So that's where I got into this research mode and discovered this molecule called creatine hydrochloride, which we described as concentrated creatine, or concrete, which is where the name comes from. And it was the closest thing that we could get that was safe, healthy, and legal, that would provide dramatically increased strength, endurance, and recovery for these athletes. So that's how I got into it. Then come to find out, wow, creatine has a lot more in terms of functionality in the body than just giving energy to the muscles.
Well, the thing is, we've been hearing a lot about creatine, it seems, lately, and a lot of people have no idea what it is. And why is this type of creatine different than the creatine monohydrate that I've seen around?
And I'll say that, yes, we are hearing a lot about it, but creatine has been a very key molecule in our bodies, in our diets, since the beginning of time. Creatine is present in a lot of our foods, particularly meats and certain fishes and things. But in past, people ate more of the foods that are rich in creatine. And so supplementation really wasn't much of something that people were concerned about. As diets changed, as health concerns changed for fat and cholesterol and things, and as cooking techniques changed, and people started getting less creatine in the diet, then creatine supplementation started on the rise, and creatine monohydrate was the first creatine that was developed and kind of mass produced for people. So it's been around the longest, and it is the most studied of the creatines just because it has been around the longest. But it is now been proven in studies to not be the most efficient of the creatines. You have to take a lot of creatine monohydrate to get a little into the body's blood compartment or into the plasma, and therefore into the cells. And what we were focused on is trying to find forms of any amino acid, peptide, or creatine that would be more efficient in getting into the body, so that smaller doses without side effects could help with the overall cellular functions. As you said, a lot of people don't know what creatine does. It literally is used by every cell in the body to generate enough energy for that cell to perform as it should, to have optimal functionality. Athletes have known that it supports muscle energy, And now people are recognizing that it supports brain energy and heart energy and immune system energy and all of those things that keep us as healthy as possible. So creatine naturally is in our food. It's naturally occurring in our body. The body makes some of the creatine we need, but it anticipates you're supposed to get some from your diet. And so it never makes all of the creatine we need. Since people's diets fall short oftentimes, that's where supplementation has become an important aspect of health and health maintenance for many people. And creatine hydrochloride is just simply a more efficient molecule in terms of absorption into the body, so that smaller doses deliver more creatine to the cells, to all the cells, and avoiding the side effects that some of the large doses of monohydrate cause in many people, which is bloat, water retention, diarrhea, GI distress, etc. Doesn't happen in all people, but it happens in enough that it's not a sustainable form for many people to take as a supplement to their dietary creatine.
How do you know if you need creatine?
Well, first of all, everyone needs creatine. Your body just simply cannot function
Interesting.
any sort of optimal health condition if you don't have an ample store of creatine. It is, as I indicated, it's key for all systems and all cells of the body. Your brain uses 20% of the body's creatine just to think. And so cognition, avoiding neurodegeneration and dementia, and those sorts of things are now being looked at and studied as a functionality of good creatine stores. The World Health Organization right now believes that many of the increases in chronic diseases globally is because our immune system has not had enough creatine to fuel the T cells that keep us healthy. The T cells go and kill viruses and bacteria and cancer cells and such things, and really are responsible as our first line of defense for health. And the T cells absolutely depend on creatine. So first off, everyone needs creatine, and your body generally only makes about half of what you need. And the other half, as I said, is supposed to come from your diet. But because people either overcook food or don't eat enough red meat or certain other meats that contain creatine, most people are chronically low. I think the most recent data that I have seen estimated that over 65% of adult Americans are low in creatine or have a suboptimal creatine level in their body. It doesn't mean your cells don't function. They just don't function as well as they could or should for optimal health.
Okay, so I have two questions. Do you get tested for creatine in your body? Is there a test that tells you if you are deficient in it? And my second question is relative to diet, as you mentioned earlier, that people aren't eating appropriately. What do you need to eat in order to supplement your body with creatine?
Certainly. There are tests. They're not common for creatine. It's not part of your normal, if you go in for a physical and you have a blood workup and you do the blood chemistries and look at all the markers that are normally associated with good health, your cholesterol, your creatinine, which is a metabolite of creatine, but that's used to judge kidney function oftentimes, and all the other, sodium and potassium levels and things. Creatine isn't on that list. You can ask for a specific creatine test, but it just isn't commonly tested for. Most people, as I say, are just low because they're not eating enough rare red meats. When you cook meats, it oftentimes will destroy a lot of the creatine. So if you're cooking you might be a red meat eater, and in that case, if you're eating it medium or more, you probably aren't getting much creatine out of that intake. Chicken and pork have creatine in them, a little bit less than red meat. Herring is a good source of creatine. It's one of the few fishes that have creatine, but salmon, cod, tuna, those don't have much in them. Fruits and vegetables have very, very little creatine. The same with nuts and legumes have very little. So if somebody is on a vegan or vegetarian diet, pretty guaranteed that their dietary intake is low, and they would benefit from supplementation. The meats and the foods that you eat and the way that it's prepared are key. Yes, that, as you said, the testing is something that can be done, but I think most people can just assume that if they're not eating raw or rare red meat, beef carpaccio or beef tartare or something like that, then they're probably substandard in terms of their intake.
Yeah,
Yeah,
obviously, if you're doing a plant-based diet, forget it.
yeah, no, absolutely. There's been studies that show that vegans, vegetarians, and when monitored for short-term memory and cognition, have improved in a short period of time in those categories of assessment with creatine supplementation. So there appears to truly be something to that in terms of making sure that the brain has enough, and then of course that goes to the rest of the body. Many people are functionally tired, and they might take a cup of coffee or have stimulants or whatever to try to perk them up, an energy drink or whatever. But that is really truly transient stimulant energy, and it's not the functional energy that your cells need so that you just don't feel fatigued and worn down. So fatigue is certainly a significant kind of benchmark or red flag for people being low in creatine.
And I did hear that. I heard that if you are fatigued, and it's also good for your muscles as well as your brain.
Yeah,
Which is why
absolutely.
athletes probably really like taking creatine, because it really helps their muscles strengthen.
It does. It helps with strength. It helps with the muscle's ability to endure during strenuous exercise, and then the recovery. It's particularly important because when you're challenging your muscles or you're breaking down muscle tissue and stuff through strenuous exercise, the body has to recover and repair, and it uses creatine to help fuel the cellular functions of recovery, so that the muscle tissue is able to restore itself and heal, in effect, between bouts of strenuous exercise.
We're talking about supplements, and there are so many out there on the market. How do you know how much to take?
Yeah, good question. And it really, when you look at the variety of supplements, because you accurately observe, there's a lot of supplements out there, and a lot of very good and important supplements. Protein and vitamin D and zinc and magnesium and fish oil, and all of those are really important. And it might just sound like I'm a biased creatine guy, but I will make the following statement, and I think it's well backed up. Creatine is the most important of all the supplements that you can take, because it's foundational, because none of those other supplements matter much if the cells don't have enough energy to use them optimally. And the rate limiting molecule on cellular energy, so that the cells can use all those other good supplements, is creatine. And how much you should take, your question is a really an appropriate one. Your body makes about half the creatine it needs. On average, a human needs or uses about 2 to 3 grams of creatine a day. Your body makes about a gram, mostly in the liver. There's some other areas where it can generate some creatine, but mainly in the liver. With that 1 gram, it's expecting from your diet to get another 1.5, or 2 grams or so. You need to probably, if you figure that most people in some varieties of food that they get at least a little bit of creatine, even just say 500 milligrams. So you need about another gram in your diet, and that is going to be how much actually gets into the blood compartment. You'll hear people say that with creatine monohydrate, the recommended dose is 5 grams. Well, okay, if you need 1 gram, why take 5? Well, it's because most of that dose, unfortunately, doesn't make it into the blood compartment. There was a good study out of the University of Manitoba Medical Center, and it was published in the Journal of Pharmaceutics in 2018, and they tagged monohydrate and watched it in the mammalian body. And unfortunately, somewhere in the neighborhood of 85% of the dose just got excreted. So only 15% of that 5 gram dose made it into the bloodstream to be able to then nourish the cells and provide that functional energy that we speak of. The creatine that gets in from creatine monohydrate is very efficacious and very good. So if you're willing and able to take a larger dose of creatine monohydrate, you can get the creatine into your system that it needs and wants, and frankly, that the cells crave. Or you could take a smaller dose of a more efficiently absorbed creatine, like creatine hydrochloride, which is the version that I'm speaking of, concrete. And that dose, that recommended dose that has been determined from millions of doses given and from some plasma uptake and pharmacokinetic work that's been done, is 750 milligrams or 0.75 grams. So that's about 7 times smaller than the normal recommended monohydrate dose. And that has much higher bioavailability for the body. And so a 0.75 to 1.5 gram dose of the creatine hydrochloride, of the concrete, is certainly adequate to give the body enough creatine to make up for what either it isn't getting in the diet, and to augment what is being made by the body naturally or endogenously. And so that exogenous supplementation of creatine, from whatever form you take, it's you want to be getting in a net about another gram per day, so that your cells have enough. And now with creatine monohydrate, I will say that many people are now saying that you need to take 10, 15, 20 grams in order to drive enough to get into your brain, because of that bioavailability challenge that monohydrate has, and the muscles soak up most of the creatine. There's a good study out of the Journal of Nutrition, JANA, the Journal of the American Nutrition Association, that just came out this past fall. Dr. Sergey Ostoich is an MD PhD that showed very low levels of creatine HCl, not 10 and 20 grams to get to the brain, but the 0.75 to 1.5 grams of that form, of that molecule, did in fact have significant increases in brain energy metabolism and brain creatine levels. So people can certainly choose whatever creatine supplement they want. It just depends on the size and the convenience of the dose. And then the higher doses do cause, as I mentioned earlier, some people to have side effects where the body struggles to get rid of it and to excrete the creatine, and thereby some water retention and bloat and cramping and GI distress happens. But if people can put up with that, or if it doesn't affect them, then monohydrate may be a choice. But for many people, the more efficient type of dosing is with the more efficient molecule, the more bioavailable, the more absorbed molecule of creatine hydrochloride.
Well, you slightly brought up something I was just going to ask about: side effects. And does creatine, or has it been known to affect any other organs in the body?
Well, no, because the organs themselves, the cells in the organs, need creatine to function. The kidneys need creatine for the kidney activity, the filtration to happen. The liver cells need creatine to function. The lung cells need creatine to be able to regulate our breathing and process the oxygenation of blood properly. So all of the parts of the body need creatine, and it's very symbiotic. You don't have any toxicity or side effects from creatine in the body, because it knows exactly what to do with it. We have a very impressive creatine transport system, or creatine receptors on cells, so that when they see creatine, they grab the creatine molecule and want to take it into the cell, so that it helps with that functional energy in the mitochondria. Dr. Lily Yang out of UCLA showed that when a T cell, a killer T cell, sees say, for instance, a blast cell, a carcinoma cell, a cancer cell, the first thing it does is armors up with more creatine receptors, because it wants to take on as much creatine and cellular energy as possible before it goes and tries to fight and kill that bad cell. And what she showed is if you give those cells, the T cells, a fully saturated amount of creatine, they go and win every time. It's only when they functionally get tired, they don't have enough creatine, and they go to fight to keep us healthy, and they get exhausted, and then they succumb, and the cancer, the virus, the bacteria, or whatever has the chance to proliferate. But our bodies are beautiful in that if we give the nutrients that it needs and expects and wants, it performs beautifully in terms of health maintenance and in terms of functionality, from muscle energy and strength and cognition and such things. So it really is magnificent how natural creatine is in the body and how it supports all of the functions.
How long does someone need to take it in order to really feel a difference? And
Sure.
Can they feel a difference?
Yes, the answer is yes. They can feel a difference, and with regard to the rapidity with which they see it, I've heard people say that are monohydrate aficionados or experts that they say, well, you need to take it for 3 or 4 weeks, and you get the muscle saturated, and then you start to experience the strength and some of the gains and things. With creatine hydrochloride, it's so efficient. I tell people that you'll be able to tell after one dose. If you take the recommended amount, which typically for strenuous exercise is 750 milligrams per 100 pounds of body weight, and then you take that about 30 to 60 minutes before you go do an exercise that you know will make you hurt. There are certain things that you do on leg day or this, that you know that you're going to have DOMS, DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, a day or two later. Your legs, your back, your shoulders, your arms, something's going to be sore from that strenuous exercise. If you take that dose of creatine hydrochloride before that workout and do that workout that will create DOMS and soreness, you will either not be sore or you'll be a lot less sore than you normally are. And that's how quickly one dose can demonstrate and deliver those sorts of results, so that you can tell that, wow, something is working.
Yeah.
So it's very efficient and effective.
We're talking with Mark Faulkner about concrete creatine. How do we find out more about you and your product and creatine in general?
Well, you can certainly visit the concrete.com website, and that's CON-CRET.com, or you can go to the Vireo Systems, VIREO, Vireo, it's a Latin word for health, but vireosystems.com. Someone can always reach out and ask questions of me. I regularly field inquiries from interested consumers or science and research folks. Happy to always share any information that we have. There's another website, and it's creatinehcl.com. It's more of an independent website, but CREATINEHCL, creatinehcl.com, and it is a repository for a lot of studies on creatine and the various uses of it, both from a performance and muscle standpoint, but then also from medical indications, everything from neurodegeneration and oncology and chemotherapy and immunology and the immune system and things. So there's a lot of good information at those websites.
Mark Faulkner, thank you so much for your time today and your education to us regarding creatine. I appreciate your time.
Very pleased to have shared it with you. Thank you.
I'm Tonia King. Thanks for listening to Food Talk for Health today. If you like what you hear, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode. We'd love it if you'd leave a rating or a review so that others can discover the show as well. And be sure to share with someone who might benefit. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Food Talk for Health is produced by Creative Voice and Media. Our theme was written and performed by Rick King. Thanks for listening to Food Talk for Health.